days for that gradient to relax. So even though you might think you're out of the woods by late Monday or by Tuesday, you're still going to be dealing with winds by the time Wednesday and Thursday rolls around. So the potential is definitely there for widespread power outages with Sandy right through actually the middle, if not the latter half of the work week coming up.
Well, Mike, we have gotten reports now that we have 6 states in states of emergencies, if you will. What does that mean as it relates to power outages and the aviation industry? More government funds?
Well, as far as the aviation industry, you will definitely be impacted, let's say, by tomorrow in places like New York City. Once winds reach 30, 35 miles per hour, that begins to slow air traffic down, and we are expecting those winds to pick up in New York City by late tomorrow, and especially by the time Monday comes around. Anytime winds reach 60 miles per hour, airports usually close, so we will be looking at closure of airports along the eastern seaboard pretty much from Sunday night probably all the way into Tuesday once Sandy works its way inland.
So what should people do if they're booking a flight, say, to New York City, say Monday afternoon? Should they cancel their flights or what?
Well, definitely call ahead. You want to make sure you don't want to show up for no reason, but I'm sure we'll see videos of people stranded at airports just, sleeping on the seats for a day or two at a time. The main thing, I think, is that you're going to get the snowball effect. Once an airport closes, that backlogs other airports. So if you're flying from O'Hare into LaGuardia and that gets delayed or canceled, that plane was set to take off from LaGuardia and take off to, let's say, LAX following that. So it has a snowball effect. So we'll see the domino effect with these closures as they come along over the next couple of days.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mike Montoya, of course, with the aviation industry, meteorologist in the Northeast. I'll tell you what, huge concerns over the next several days in the Northeast. Here's Heather with more.
Vivian, we do have huge concerns, and we will be watching several areas. Now, certainly, we've got some action in the west, too, and there we'll have some rain, but a lot of you here in the east are focused on what we're seeing. We've got a frontal system. By the way, this is an antifront because you can see that the wet weather is coming in on the back side of it, and then we have our hurricane that continues to send more of that rain and all the other associated effects with that hurricane as it moves and turns closer to the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Much colder air behind that frontal system, so a lot of us are going to see a drop in temperatures in the days to come. That's something for you to keep in mind as you pick out that Halloween costume or as you get the kids ready. We find here then, again, as we go into tomorrow and Monday and even, really into Tuesday, we're going to be seeing some lingering effects. This is going to be a really devastating situation. Exactly where it lines up, it's going to depend on who sees the worst of it, but we do know that these effects, these devastating effects, are going to be widespread. So that's the case as we go into now the early part of the week. Starting really tomorrow into Monday and Tuesday, we'll start to note all of these things starting to occur. I do want to very quickly see if I can advance fast enough. Here is Tuesday, but let's see if I can take it into Wednesday too, because that's Halloween, of course, and I know a lot of you will be out with your kids trick-or-treating. There we go. We'll be back.
This morning I formally declared a state of emergency in anticipation of Hurricane Sandy, which is expected to be a severe and a potentially devastating storm that will hit New Jersey beginning Sunday night and be in full force by Monday. At this point in time, it's likely that Hurricane Sandy will make landfall late on Monday evening, bring with it accumulated rain, high winds, and shore erosion. First, we need to be able to make sure that we can mobilize every aspect of government, both state and local, as we're hit with these conditions. And so I've issued today mandatory evacuation for Sunday at 4 p.m. for the barrier islands from Sandy Hook south to Cape May.
A late-season storm has the East Coast bracing. Sandy continues its slow track north, drawing even closer to an eventual landfall that could affect up to 50 million people.
And residents in the path are already stocking up on supplies, preparing for long-term power outages. In fact, we have expert analysis and team coverage spanning the coast as well as right here inside the building. And one of those is meteorologist Julie Martin in Nags Head, North Carolina.
Yeah, we are tracking Sandy, of course, all day, all night, right here on the Weather Channel. I'm Vivian Brown.
And I'm Heather Tash, and the impacts really could be devastating. And we are talking about flooding rain. We are talking about destructive winds, storm surges that will hit during a full moon when tides are at their peak. And all of this combined makes for a potentially historic storm. And Fire Island, New York, they have now ordered a mandatory evacuation.
Yeah, take a look at this video now. Earlier today in Topsail Beach, North Carolina, the Atlantic Ocean slightly surging up toward the dunes, hitting steps down the beach. Some homeowners made sandbag walls to try to keep the water at bay.
And we are Hurricane Central. We want to give you the latest information we have now on Sandy, and officials have ordered a mandatory evacuation, as we said, of Fire Island, New York. Only 200 to 300 people live here year-round, but there are thousands of residents during the summer that stay here. All major U.S. airlines, they are offering waivers to travelers who want to change their plans because of Sandy.
Yeah, check with your carrier, actually, for specific details on your airport reports. So far, only a handful of flights have been canceled, actually. Near all of them are out of the Caribbean and Florida. Sandy is expected to make a nightmare of traffic in the Northeast in the days to come.
And you know, the scary part, Vivian, too, is it could make a nightmare, too, in the Northeast with the subways. I mean, it's just a possibility that they could get flooded.
Might not be able to get anywhere. In fact, we're expecting huge power outages all across the region. States of emergencies have been issued for New York State, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and even the eastern parts of North Carolina.
And as you can see, the major threats that we continue to monitor here as we go through time. And our hurricane specialist, Carl Parker, is standing by at the expert desk with more in-depth analysis. And you know, Carl, I sometimes think that people think, oh, you know, it's all hype, we can ride this thing out. But really, get to the down and dirty. This is going to be a very serious situation for folks.
Yeah, it really is. You know, it's going to be different from some hurricanes in the respect that we're not going to see the incredibly intense winds right near the core that you'd get, for example, out of a Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane. So we're not going to see entire towns just leveled by the system. But what we will see is a very long-lasting, very widespread wind event that is going to have a major impact in the most populous region of the entire country. And we're going to talk more about the impacts in a moment here. I want to show you some high-resolution satellite photos here. This is from the University of Wisconsin, and this is 1-minute satellite imagery. Most of what you see has intervals of 15 or 30 minutes, and this is these pictures are being taken every minute. And you can see the structure of the system, and it really is remarkable. It's got this warm core that is really very much like a hurricane, but then it's got drier air wrapping in and is feeding off the contrast between that drier and cooler air and warm and humid air, along with working with some upper-level energy. So while we like to put storms in a neat category saying that one is tropical or it's non-tropical, this is actually somewhere on the spectrum in between. Now, I want to show you what's been going on with the models. This was last night's European model run showing the storm coming into central and southern Jersey, and this was the next to most recent run of the GFS taking the storm more into New York. And as we look at the most recent run of the GFS, you can see that it's now more in agreement with the European model in that it takes the center of the storm as a 949 area of low pressure. By comparison, the superstorm of 93 was a 960 low, an incredibly intense storm coming into New Jersey, and so a lot of model agreement now. We're going to talk more about that in the Tropical Update. Back to you.
All right, scary scenario. Thank you so much, Carl.
Yeah, we're keeping you covered all up and down the East Coast over the next several days. In fact, here's Julie Martin from Nags Head, North Carolina.
Well, the winds are continuing to pick up, and the outer bands working their way into the Outer Banks. Pretty impressive considering that storm is still well off, hundreds of miles off to my south and southeast. What we're looking at now, though, is a pretty rough sea out here. We've got waves 4 to 6 feet. That old pier, by the way, a fishing pier, part of that blown away in Hurricane Isabel back in 2003. So we'll be waiting to see how well that holds up during Sandy. Dare County officials have not issued any mandatory evacuations, but what they are concerned about is flooding, and much of that flooding would be on the sound side, not the Atlantic side here, where there's been a major beach renourishment project. Residents here think this sand is going to hold back the water pretty well. They're pretty confident. Again, it is still a wait and see, though. Now, on the sound side, that's where a lot of the water could get pushed up into these low-lying properties, and officials are expecting a 3 to 5 foot water rise throughout this event. The worst conditions here in eastern North Carolina will be this evening and through the early morning hours on Sunday. That's when we'll see those tropical storm force winds, possibly power outages, and of course erosion and flooding. We'll continue to track Sandy from North Carolina. For now, that is the very latest.
Everybody's going to need to take some action, I think. At minimum, bringing your lawn furniture and all that sort of thing. At most would be to evacuate.
Welcome back to our continuing hurricane coverage. I'm Dave Malkoff. Sandy is kicking up waves and dumping rain up and down the Atlantic coast as it tracks towards potentially devastating landfall in the mid-Atlantic. Meteorologist Stephanie Abrams is in the field reporting from Delaware. Steph?
Here in Rehoboth Beach, if this system comes in and we get that onshore flow and we get the surge, they do have a little protection, but not a lot. As you can see, they have the beach fence up. That obviously is going to be no match for the water. And then they do have these dunes, but they are small, though there is vegetation to try to hold them in place. And then notice this hotel that is right on the beach. There's no boards up. So they are just going to get that wind right off of the water with that onshore flow, if we get that onshore flow. And remember, you're going to have the strongest winds right at the coast because there's no friction. So if we do get that onshore flow, we could see a huge push of water. We could see big-time power outages. And if there are any sort of chairs or debris like that, could easily be picked up by the wind. To be honest with you, when we were driving in last night and even today, we haven't seen a whole lot of people here in Rehoboth Beach doing any sort of preparations. It seems business as usual, but hopefully from the mid-Atlantic all the way up into Maine, people are getting ready for this potentially monstrous and devastating storm. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. That was Stephanie Abrams in Delaware, where the governors of Delaware and the governors of New Jersey and other states are telling people that it is time right now to get ready for this storm. The main thing you need is 3 days of water, so you got to stock up your refrigerator. Make sure you have as much water in there. Canned food is something good. If you can get heater meals or you can get MREs, those are good because you don't know how long the power will be out. Let's get right over to Viv.
All right, get ready for this storm. And this storm is Sandy. It's a hurricane now with 75-mile-an-hour winds. There it is, already pumping in some of the moisture and the gusty winds, very persistent winds actually along the coast of the Carolinas, down off the coast of Florida. And then we're watching the surface cold front as it drapes east of the Great Lakes area. It too is pressing toward the northeastern corridor. Right now it's bringing rain because it's separating the cooler air behind it, with temperatures only in the 40s back towards Chicago, but in the 60s in the New York City area. So that temperature divide alone is creating the band of rain here. Notice how the rain extends all the way into the eastern parts of Kentucky. But all of this rain and embedded storminess is associated with Sandy. Look at the persistent northeast winds now in excess of 15 and 25 miles an hour here. Gusts at the Myrtle Beach area. Wind advisories have been issued for the coast of the South and the Mid-Atlantic, and actually these wind advisories have been issued for parts of the Northeast as well as Sandy continues to move northward. We also have flood warnings, including Philadelphia, the Jersey Shore, and all the way down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, because we're talking about very, very gusty winds, a widespread wind event, and the rain will be an issue as well, starting tomorrow with a cold front coming in from the west and Sandy coming in from the south. Again, huge implications on the Northeast. Widespread power outages. Some 50 million people will be impacted, and you need to prepare if you're in the Northeast for power outages anywhere from 7 to 10 days once the two of these systems merge on the northeastern corridor. So please rush to completion right now everything that you need personally now to keep you afloat over the next 7 to 10 days, because we'll be here, of course, keeping you updated. Okay, back to you, Heather.
All right, well, thanks so much, Vivian. then I want to take you into Philadelphia, where you do note some clouds, but all in all, we have some quiet conditions today. Then things are going to be going downhill because we will find the rain, the wind, everything that we've been talking about moving into the Philadelphia area. In fact, this is one of those areas where we are anticipating widespread power outages. Just a real quick look, and you can note some of the conditions through here. And Wednesday, we are going to find maybe a shower or two, but all in all, it's looking dry. And the reason that's important, I know to a lot of you, is because we are heading into Halloween, and that's a big day for a lot of us to be outside with our kids and for the kids to be outside. So quick check here on that forecast, just so you have a heads up as we get closer to that. Notice that it's still going to be pretty rough, pretty rotten for us in the Northeast, and we'll have some cool air to the south. It's not going to be that mild Halloween this time, and we'll find in the west some rain and some showers, but maybe mild, though. Not too bad. Middle of the country. We'll be back with more on Sandy.
Well, as Sandy churns toward the U.S. East Coast, the Bahamas are starting to, unfortunately, clean up behind the mess that Sandy left. The Category 1 hurricane toppled light posts, flooded streets, and actually tore off the tree branches as it spun through the Bahamas. Those beautiful, beautiful palm trees in the area. Authorities say at least one person was killed. It is now 50 past the hour. Let's get you over to Carl Parker in the Global Forecast Center with more on Tropical Storm Sandy. And Carl, again, it's kind of a waiting game right now, but unfortunately, this could be a huge, huge storm.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of disagreement now among the models. Over the last couple of days, we've been talking about the differences in the models, and they've been slowly coming more together. And now we have a new run of the American model, the GFS model, which is pretty much in agreement with the last run of the European model. So they are settling in on a solution that involves the center of the storm coming into New Jersey. Again, it's a huge storm, so the impacts are going to be far-reaching. And here is the most recent run of the GFS. I know it's a little difficult to make out the coastline here, but there is Cape Cod right in there. That's Long Island. Here's New Jersey, and there is the Delmarva Peninsula. There's the center of the storm, and the model here wants to take the central pressure down to 949. What does that mean? Well, the standard sea level pressure is 1014. By the time we get down to 993, that's where we see a lot of hurricanes at about 993, and some of the stronger storms that have come through the northeastern history, including the superstorm in 1993, had a pressure of 960, so this would actually be lower than that. So you're talking about an incredibly large windstorm, and that is precisely what the European model is showing. Their solution just a little bit farther south, but basically the same thing. And this, by the way, is showing you lines of equal pressure, and where you see a lot of these lines, you're seeing a big difference in pressure between the center of the storm and the surrounding environment. So you've got a huge area of low pressure here, and that roughly corresponds to where the strongest winds are going to be, and this is going to take a long time. So here's a look. We'll step through it. This is going into Monday early. This is late Sunday and overnight and into Monday. And you can see this very large area of wind, which will already be starting to pile up the water and taking it into the coast. And the strong wind will be making its way into the 95 corridor, say from North Carolina northward to Virginia, Baltimore, D.C., Philly, and up into New York. This is overnight on Monday. Then as we step forward here through early Monday morning, we find the winds getting stronger, moving into the Delmarva, into Jersey, into New York. That piling up of the water also becomes more persistent and even grows. And so we're talking about some pretty significant water level rises here, and I'll show you that graphic in just a moment. And notice the strong winds spreading farther inland, well into interior parts of the Northeast. And then going through Monday afternoon and into the evening, the center of the storm comes on shore. That'll be the point of maximum water level rise right there, and coming right into that area where the coastline forms an L, which will also enhance the water level rise. And through the course of this, because it's going to take so long, there will be multiple high tide cycles, and there's a full moon. So for a lot of different reasons, we could be looking at a tremendous surge coming into the Jersey coast and right up potentially into New York Harbor. So you see the wind moving into the interior parts of the Northeast, and then we'll step this forward into early morning on Tuesday. Still very, very strong winds, still seeing the onshore flow, begins to change direction, and then even into Tuesday afternoon, we've still got this windstorm winding down slowly, and that goes into Wednesday. So that's a big part of this story, the fact that it's going to be so persistent that it's going to go on for such a long time. So we're looking for a water level rise of 3 to 5 feet in North Carolina. Then here is the real area of concern from Long Island Sound into Raritan Bay, along the Jersey Shore, Delaware Bay, and down Ocean City, 4 to 8 feet. That is above ground level, which means that if you are at the coast when the storm is coming through, and you're 6 feet tall, you could potentially be looking at water that is a couple of feet higher than you. So this is very dangerous, obviously, if you live along the coast, and could have real serious implications in New York City. We came very close to having major damage to the subway system during Irene, and we are going to face that risk with this storm. So here's a look at that area of strong winds. You see the hurricane-force wind gusts will be coming in most likely into Philadelphia, Washington, Baltimore, D.C., and also New York by overnight and early Tuesday morning, and then we'll continue to see that strong wind through the day on Tuesday, slowly winding down going into Wednesday. So folks, today is the day to get ready for this storm and to get ready for having your power out. Guys, back to you.
We can't say it better than that, Carl. Thanks very much. Today is the day for you to prepare, because after today, we're talking about things definitely going downhill. Keep it tuned right here. We'll keep you updated on Hurricane Sandy.
Carrying through the Caribbean, the outer reaches of Sandy now soaking parts of the eastern seaboard and causing dangerous coastal conditions.
But unfortunately, the worst may be yet to come as folks from Washington, D.C. to New York City brace for what could be a potentially historic hit.
And I'm meteorologist Julie Martin live in Nags Head, North Carolina, where we're now seeing the far western edges of Sandy, bringing rain and some wind, but there's plenty more to come. I'll detail the forecast and the threats coming up.
Emergency is in effect for parts of 7 states and the Washington, D.C. area as Sandy churns just off the Atlantic coast. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the special edition of Weekend Now. I'm meteorologist Vivian Brown.
And of course, that's up from 5 when we started out here this morning. And I'm meteorologist Heather Tash. You know, expert analysis of the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. That is going to be coming up in just a moment. But we also want to talk about the gas station in central Connecticut near Hartford. It is one of countless places from New England to the mid-Atlantic where people are filling up their cars, their cans, time running out to prepare. This is one of the things you need. Also cash, medications, and batteries, flashlights, radios.
All right, let's get the very latest, of course, on Sandy. We have Dave Malkoff in the Satellite Center with more. Dave.
Heather and Viv, we're covering all the latest information coming from all these satellites behind me. 2 more states have actually declared states of emergency in anticipation of Sandy's impacts. Those are Connecticut and New Jersey. Washington, D.C.'s transit system says most of its preparations are complete, but no decisions have been made yet about changing or reducing rail or bus service. Utility companies all over the Northeast are preparing. About 100 energy workers from Arkansas are actually heading to the East Coast to help. And a lot of people got those generators at home after the last storm last year, and people are warning those people who have the generators to make sure that they are properly hooked up by an electrician so you don't injure the electricity workers who are coming in to help after that. Back to you guys.
You know, and the one thing every time, too, you have a situation where you need generators, people mistakenly use them in their home, and it ends up with deadly results. So please keep that in mind.
I'll tell you what, we are talking about 50 million people impacted or more from Sandy. Here's a look at the areas now that we certainly want you to be aware. Now, of course, Sandy is well down to the south, kind of parallel with the north coast of Florida right now, but it is moving north-northeast northeast, and it will, we think, move into the northeastern corridor. So you need to be rushing to completion everything that you need to be prepared to sustain yourself and your family, say, for 7 to 10 days without any electricity. So take action right now. The area shaded in red, because this is the area that we think will be most impacted as we go through the next 24 hours.
And, you know, let's bring in now our hurricane specialist, Carl Parker. And, you know, Carl, because people have been watching this, it's been moving up the coast, they probably have said, well, you know, I haven't seen huge impacts yet. Do I really need to worry? But it's a very different story for folks in the Northeast.
Right.
Yeah, it really is, because the storm has been staying offshore, and it will continue to stay offshore largely. We're going to get brushed by it in the Carolinas, but it's going to really come in then bodily into the Northeast on Monday and on Tuesday. Now, we still are looking at a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane. We'll get a new advisory probably inside of an hour, and it's now moving north-northeast at 9 miles per hour. Take a look at the pressure here. Some of you may recall Hurricane Ike that moved into the Texas Gulf Coast in 2008. It was a very large storm, had a central pressure in the low 950s when it made landfall, and so that's a sort of a measure of the amount of energy that is involved in a system. So even though the winds are just at 75 miles per hour, this is a very powerful system, very large system, and it's going to take a long time to wind down, and that's why the impacts are going to go on for some time. Here you see the rain that's coming down here along the Carolina coast. The winds certainly have been gusty, but the bulk of the wind is now offshore. You can see the circulation very clearly in the wind field there. Here is a look at the forecast models, and actually we'll have that for you in just a moment, and we'll take a look at the track from the Hurricane Center, taking the storm to the north and then northwest. Models really settling in on this solution involving the Jersey Shore and the Delmarva, but again, it's a very large storm that's going to have a wide-ranging impact, a long-duration windstorm, and we'll talk more about that coming up a bit later in the show. Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Carl. And we also want to get the latest information now from Nags Head, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's where meteorologist Julie Martin is standing by. Julie.
Well, ladies, it is still not the greatest out here. We have winds gusting up around 30 miles an hour coming in from the northeast, and that direction is onshore. Unfortunately, that is going to be the case for many, many hours to come, and what that will do is push any rain and water onshore instead of offshore, which is the worst case scenario here. I want to show you the Atlantic, though, behind me, and you can see it is definitely churning out there. Those waves are still around anywhere between 4 and 6 feet. The pier, this old fishing pier, still holding up quite well. This was actually damaged during Hurricane Isabel back in 2003. The beaches are in great shape here, though, along this stretch of Nags Head. They've undergone a major renourishment project here, and the homeowners and people who live here tell me that they are very confident these beaches are going to stay in place during whatever Sandy brings. So we will see, but the timeline for this is going to be this window between, I would say, around 10, 11 o'clock tonight in through the overnight hours and early Sunday morning. That's when conditions will be the worst. We will see tropical storm force winds here. We could see some coastal flooding on the sound side of this strip of land. As you know, I'm surrounded by water right now on both sides, so we're going to be watching for that as well. And as you were all mentioning, this is just sort of that preview, that little taste of what is later to come up the East Coast as we move into Monday and Tuesday. Definitely a very big threat there, and everyone right now needs to be preparing. Back to you guys.
That is right. Thanks very much, Julie Martin, reporting from Nags Head, North Carolina, there in the Outer Banks. So we'll keep you updated.
We'll be right back. A lot more to come. And we are taking a look here. This is North Myrtle Beach, and it's one of those places along the Atlantic that we monitor as we continue to see Sandy marching along the coastline, and it is impacting beaches today, but we're going to find that the effects will be even more widespread in the days to come. This is one of our eyewitness viewers that shot this, and this is, of course, as I said, North Myrtle Beach. That is in South Carolina, and it's overcast. You can see the waves there churning. If you have video or pictures that you would like to send us from Sandy, if you can do it safely, take them and then send it to us at eyewitness@weather.com. And Vivian, I know that you are keeping track, too, of what's happening here along the coast and elsewhere.
Yeah, here's a look at our satellite picture superimposed with radar as we show you both entities that we're watching. Of course, Sandy is the top one, but we also have this cold front that's approaching from the west, and both of these are headed for the northeastern corridor. But let's get the very latest as we zoom in on Sandy. Now, you can see the southernmost edges of the wraparound moisture from Sandy is away from the coast of Florida. We do not have reports of rain along the coast. I know the big game in a couple of hours in the Jacksonville area, and it looks as though we'll be in the clear here for the game. But offshore, you can see the heavier rains mainly over open waters. But the coast of Georgia, of course, is a little concaved, so it's kind of kicked in. So Georgia's coast not being impacted. But notice just as we start to stick out into the Atlantic, we're picking up some of the heavier rain and the persistent winds. We've had reports of gusts even in the Charleston area near Myrtle Beach, too, over 20 miles an hour. So it's already becoming very blustery and very, very wet here over the mid-Atlantic. Now, the center of Sandy is still pretty far south, but it will be moving northward. So all of the rain that we have over the Carolinas will be easing up the coast. So today is the day for you to prepare if you're in New York City, if you're in Boston, anywhere along the northeast coast for Sandy. But at the same time, the inland areas of the northeast, beware, because the cold front will be coming in from the west. Already it's bringing rain in western New York and Pennsylvania down into the southern parts of Ohio. But again, as mentioned, the two of them will be coming together as we go through the next several days, and that will mean huge problems over the northeast. So prepare right now. Heather?
That's right. You know, this is only the beginning. Sandy kicking up waves, dumping rain up and down parts of the Atlantic coast, and it is tracking toward a potentially devastating landfall in the mid-Atlantic. Meteorologist Stephanie Abrams is in the field. She's reporting from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Here in Rehoboth Beach, if this system comes in and we get that onshore flow and we get the surge, they do have a little protection, but not a lot. As you can see, they have the beach fence up. That obviously is going to be no match for the water. And then they do have these dunes, but they are small, though there is vegetation to try to hold them in place. And then notice this hotel that is right on the beach. There's no boards up. So they are just going to get that wind right off of the water with that onshore flow, if we get that onshore flow. And remember, you're going to have the strongest winds right at the coast because there's no friction. So if we do get that onshore flow, we could see a huge push of water. We could see big time power outages. And if there are any sort of chairs or debris like that, could easily be picked up by the wind. To be honest with you, when we were driving in last night and even today, we haven't seen a whole lot of people here in Rehoboth Beach doing any sort of preparations. It seems business as usual, but hopefully from the mid-Atlantic all the way up into Maine, people are getting ready for this potentially monstrous and devastating storm. Back to you.
And Stephanie, you know, these are the folks that should be taking action right now, as you mentioned. I mean, everywhere here in red. And notice it's not just the coastal areas, but we are expecting, too, some of these inland areas to also have major effects. You know, this is going to be a huge system, and those winds are going to be breaking down those power poles, those trees that land on the power lines, and knocking out power to many of you well into the interior. As far as the rainfall, we are also expecting quite a bit here. Everywhere in the yellow, we're talking about 3 to 6, but you're going to find localized areas with 10 inches or more. Now, imagine that we have, you know, the storm surge coming in. We also are going to be finding that rain coming down, and flooding is going to be a huge concern in many areas. Rivers, even well away from the coast, you're going to find that those as well will be flooding over. Now, in addition to all this tropical activity we're talking about, very cold air on the backside, check it out. Snowfall, windy, and very cold. We'll be back. Much more on Sandy coming up. Stick around.
All right, people up and down the Atlantic coast are preparing for Sandy's arrival. That's Hurricane Sandy, if you don't know. It has 75-mile-an-hour winds, has already caused devastation. Now, the Red Cross in many of these communities are getting ready as well, and they cannot emphasize enough the need for preparations and help.
With Sandy on its way to our region, it's very, very important that we make sure that we have the supplies on hand that we're going to need in order to help us to get through this situation.
Make sure that you and your family necessarily have a kit so that you can sustain yourselves over the next few days when this disaster strikes. This storm is tremendous. It will affect tens of thousands of people. And the Red Cross is not a government agency. We are a nonprofit that relies on the generosity of folks just like you. So if you would consider going to our website, www.redcross.org, we deeply appreciate it. Another way to give is by texting. You can text the word Red Cross to the number 90999 to donate $10.
Okay, here's a look at the area that we're anticipating widespread power outages. Now, we're talking over 50 million people from Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., all areas in between. Again, if you live in the red shaded area, then you need to be prepared to be without any type of electricity for maybe 7 to 10 days. It's always better, of course, to be overstocked than understocked. In fact, we want to get the very latest on preparations for the potential power problems we may see from Sandy. Carl Netadine?
It's close enough. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Carl. You're the PIO of the Dominion Virginia Power, and you're talking about the service, of course, for Virginia and North Carolina. Will you be bringing in extra crews to be on standby for possible restoration?
Well, we're preparing for some potentially widespread power outages from this powerful storm, and we're urging our customers to do the same, just as you are. The storm's going to build in intensity over time, and it's going to remain a force for days, not just hours, as many people are accustomed to when a severe storm strikes. So we have our crews in place and ready. We've also requested additional assistance from utilities, possibly as far away as Texas, to send us crews to help out during the restoration process, the same way we help them when they need help.
Go ahead.
So we have, when customers lose the power, they look for our bucket trucks and our linemen out there as soon as the winds die down to get the power back on. In this case, the winds are going to prevail for quite some time. It's going to be an extended storm, as you know. It's going to move through slowly. And during that time, our restoration effort may be affected. It might take a little longer than usual to get the outage work completed. But safety is our top priority. Safety for us, safety for our customers.
Well, we know that you're getting your crews all stocked up and in place and ready to restore power if it goes out. Is there anything in particular that one can do themselves in their own home to try to stop the power from going out?
Well, when winds like this and rain like this arrive, there's not an awful lot you can do at the last minute. What you can do is what you've recommended. Make sure you have prescription medicines refilled. Make sure the fuel tank in your vehicle is refilled. We'd like to urge people, if you see a line down, don't try to figure out if it's a power line or a telephone line or a cable TV line. Stay away from it. Call 911 or call your local utility to report it. Don't touch it or don't touch anything that even comes close to it. And in times like the crisis coming up, if you have a neighbor whose health might not be the best, or if you know someone who may need some looking in on, please check them, help each other.
Oh, that is such good advice. Thanks very much, Carl Netadine. I got it right that time, Carl, with Virginia Power. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to Heather with a look at the next several days. Again, big impacts over the Northeast.
Well, and you know, Vivian, what he was really talking about, the buddy system, you know, check in with someone before you evacuate. Just let them know where you're going so they don't have to worry. Westward, we also have some active weather as we go into our Sunday, but of course, a lot of our eyes will be focused here on what we're seeing in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, because these impacts are going to be so widespread and potentially very devastating as well. And that's going to be devastating not only to the people that live there, but travelers too. And remember that with the airlines, they're having issues that can have a ripple effect across the country. Cold air coming in on the backside of the system, cold enough that we're actually talking about some snow coming into some of the higher elevations in North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. We note here too that we're still certainly on Monday watching the effects of this, because Monday into Tuesday, really tomorrow, Monday into Tuesday, is when we're going to start to see these huge impacts developing, taking place, and then eventually subsiding. But we've got a lot to get through between now and then. There's that much colder air, and it's no surprise that you start to see some of the areas of snowfall that we'll be monitoring as that cold air pulls in. Wednesday, of course, it's going to be a rough go still. And remember, Wednesday is Halloween. I know a lot of kids going to school. They'll have their costumes on. Keep this in mind as they're out trick-or-treating too. It's just not going to be so great for a lot of you.
A late season storm has the East Coast bracing. In fact, we're looking at parts of the Northeast for huge impact.
That's right, and that's why we're also looking here at a couple of things we're watching for. And again, these are pressers. On the left, New Jersey, and that's where we're going to be waiting for Chris Christie, Wildwood, New Jersey. And on the right, the New York State authorities, and that's going to be such as the Health Commissioner, the Port Authority, Director of State Operations, the Metropolitan Transportation Association. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of good information coming out of these for the folks that are going to get hit very hard.
That's right. New York, New Jersey, all in the path now and already stocking up on supplies, hopefully preparing for long-term power outages. We have expert analysis and team coverage spanning the coast, including meteorologist Julie Martin in Nags Head, North Carolina.
That's right, and you can see some of the folks here that are, you know, gathering up sand and sandbags.
That's right. In fact, Sandy, its western edges certainly making their presence here in eastern North Carolina along the Outer Banks. And coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about the wind and the rain aspects of this storm and beach erosion, a big issue here.
And we continue to track Sandy. We're going to do it all day, all night, as long as we need to for you here on the Weather Channel. I'm meteorologist Heather Tesh.
And I'm meteorologist Vivian Brown. Now, the impacts could be devastating. We're talking about flooding rains, destructive winds, and storm surges that will hit during a full moon. And, of course, that's when the tides are at their peak. So all of these combined could make for a potentially historic storm. Fire Island, New York is now under a mandatory evacuation, in fact.
That's true. And, you know, for these areas, we have some video. This is showing Topsail Beach, North Carolina. And the Atlantic Ocean, you can see that kind of surging a bit toward the dunes. It's hitting the steps here at the beach. And homeowners here, you know, we're preparing those sandbags. But again, we are anticipating that things will get much, much worse as this system travels northward.
And, of course, we are Hurricane Central, so let's give you the very latest, of course, on Hurricane Sandy. Officials have ordered a mandatory evacuation of Fire Island, New York, as mentioned. Only 200 to 300 people live there year-round, but there are thousands of residents during the summer. All major U.S. airlines are offering waivers to travelers who want to change their plans because of Sandy.
And, you know, you can check with your specific carrier for details on that. So far, only a handful of flights have been canceled. Nearly all of them, though, in and out of the Caribbean and Florida. Sandy, of course, expected to make a nightmare of travel in the Northeast in the days to come. So this is the area that's going to be hardest hit. So pay attention.
All right, so let's bring in our hurricane specialist, Carl Parker. He's in our Global Forecast Center with the latest. Carl, we're expecting another advisory very soon from the National Hurricane Center.
Yeah, that's right. It's probably going to come out near the top of the hour or at the top of the hour, and so we're awaiting that. Right now what we're watching is a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane, and I want to show you some pretty amazing images from the University of Wisconsin. This is called rapid scan satellite imagery, and rather than being taken every 15 or 30 minutes, these pictures are taken every minute, and so you can really see the motion in this storm. Notice the winds coming around here very rapidly. It's very much like being able to look into a hurricane, which we normally can't do because there's so much cloud. And right in here, that is where the warm core is. That's the part of the storm that is feeding on warm water and warm and humid air. Notice, if you will, the higher cloud that is coming out from that area of developing thunderstorms. See how it's barely moving? The wind shear is very light right in here. So this is the part of the storm that more closely resembles a hurricane. Then you've got this tremendous area of mid-level dry air that is coming around, which leads to the clear sky through here. And so you've got much of the storm, much of the rest of the storm feeding on the contrast between warm and cool air and dry and more humid air, and also interacting with some stronger winds aloft. So really a remarkable storm, but unfortunately the impacts are going to be remarkable as well. And here's the latest on the storm. Again, we're awaiting that new advisory, and a 75-mile-per-hour storm moving north-northeast. The model's in really very good agreement now that the storm will move into the mid-Atlantic coast. They've really been focusing on New Jersey Jersey. And then you notice how we have this kind of a pattern where it's moving in different directions. That's indicating how the storm is going to linger for quite some time. And we'll talk more about that coming up in our Tropical Update at 50 minutes after the hour. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, there's so much more that we want to continue to get on this system as we get more information.
Yeah.
And we're going to take you now to Nags Head.
And in North Carolina, of course, that's where meteorologist Julie Martin is standing by. And Julie, I heard you say earlier that they already went through kind of a renourishment or restoration of the beaches there. And I'm sure Sandy is just not going to do well for that restoration effort.
Well, you know, it will be a wait and see for sure, but this nourishment project was about $36 million, and I'm standing on the sand that they have used to do that project. And basically, this was in place during Irene last year. It held up very, very well, and the homeowners here are very confident, in fact, that it will hold up during Sandy. So again, we'll be taking a look at that. But here is the Atlantic Ocean right now. You can see it is churning away. The winds are still onshore, so it is blowing rain and blowing sand and all of that good stuff right in my face as I am walking here along the beach. Right now we're at low tide, high tide about 6:30 this evening, and again we have a full moon, so we're expecting those tides to be up higher than normal as well. The real crunch time for the storm here in the Carolinas, though, is going to be this evening, late this evening, overnight, and that's when we'll be seeing those tropical storm force winds, possibly some coastal flooding, 3 to 5 feet perhaps on the sound side here, and then hopefully no power outages, guys, but we will be bracing for those as well. Heather, Vivian, back to you.
All right, and you have to be prepared for the worst.
All right, well, stay with us because our special coverage of Sandy continues next on Weekend Now. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Way porch furniture, putting in sandbags around the garages, you know, to keep the water out because of the rain and everything, but securing all the deck furniture.
You're watching the Weather Channel, continuing coverage of Hurricane Sandy as it pushes in to the East Coast. We are watching a number of developments around here, and we just got off of a press conference from New York where the MTA is talking about the possibility of shutting down the subway service and the bus service, those types of things. Now, they have not made a decision right now, but they are making that decision possibly coming up in the next few days, with all eyes focused on Hurricane Sandy. Meteorologist Jen Cafagno shows us how those mid-Atlantic storms are getting ready for anything that could be catastrophic.
At the Cleveland Park Metro in Alexandria, Virginia, sandbags in place to prevent flooding as the region prepares for Sandy. Last-minute purchases included a run on generators as residents brace for massive power outages. People are also clearing the shelves at grocery stores across the area.
Well, I'm glad to get bottled water, any kind of water. Anticipating the storm, I think folks are going to be raiding all the stores and picking up as much water as they can.
I did my groceries last night and stocked up on batteries earlier to be prepared.
That sentiment echoed by D.C.'s mayor.
We could have flooding in some areas of the city, which we are working hard to try to avoid that, but this is a tropical storm. It could have severe consequences for the region.
130 miles to the east, waves crashed on Delaware's picturesque Rehoboth Beach shore. It's almost too hard to believe such a huge storm could be heading this way, and the town's mayor is leading the call to action.
Everybody's going to need to take some action, I think. At minimum, bringing your lawn furniture and all that sort of thing. At most would be to evacuate.
Emergency managers in Sussex County telling residents to make their preps now. And in Rhode Island, boaters along the coast are not taking any chances, many pulling their boats out of the water.
If the marina and the other folks around think that the storm is sufficient for pulling the boat, then I'm all for it.
Commercial fishermen are more used to rough weather, say they're watching Sandy's path closely. After unloading the day's catch, they'll pack it up for the week.
Boats can part lines, boats can break loose, so it's really doubling lines up, get everything, you know, cover all the bases.
I'm meteorologist Jen Carfagno.
And just looking at this, Connecticut now joins the list of all these states that are declaring a state of emergency. That's 7 states now, including D.C. Let's get over to our meteorologist.
All right, thanks very much, Dave. I mean, we are watching not only Sandy now, but we also have a cold front that will be pushing into the northeast as we go through the next couple of days. So let's kind of detail the radar with both of these systems. Starting with Sandy, of course, you can see the heavier rain is still offshore. So really not pushing in or brushing in along the coast of Florida like the rain showers were doing yesterday from Sandy. So the center of the system is moving far enough away from the coast that we're not getting the rain. But you can see how the coast of South and North Carolina stick out into the Atlantic. So they are picking up some of the heavier rain bands and the gusty winds, those winds out of the northeast in excess of 20 miles an hour at times. So very windy for the coastal areas, and that rain will be persistent. So beach erosion a problem. We do not have any rain or any of that here along the New England coast for now, but things will change as Sandy gets a little bit closer. Even though there's no rain on the radar, you can see how the overall canopy of clouds is invading much of the northeast. And as Sandy gets a little bit closer, of course, the rain will be on the increase, and that will lead to flooding. So flood alerts have been issued here from the Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way to the Jersey shore, so be mindful of that. Again, that's all associated with Sandy moving northward, but here's the cold front with rain pushing into western New York and western Pennsylvania all the way down into eastern Kentucky. So these two systems coming together and impeding on the northeast as we go through the next 36 hours, and then their impacts will last for 7 days or so to come. We could be without power outages because of the gusty winds. Heather?
All right, well, thanks so much, Vivi. We want to take you now into New York, where, you know, here we have temperatures in the mid-60s right now, but you, like so many others, are going to see that rain and wind moving in. You're going to start to see some tomorrow, and then the worst of it will be moving in on Monday and Tuesday. And New York, you can, let me go this way. You can see the conditions that you're going to find, and we've got lots of very wet, windy weather that's going to be coming through with this system. New York, one of the places you need to take this very seriously as we get into next week. Well, here we are looking at Cuba, and of course they have had devastating effects, and that is of course coming in from Sandy. And again, as we look here, there has been so many effects that have been felt here. Authorities say Sandy was the deadliest storm that country has seen since Dennis. And that was in 2005 when it killed 16 people, caused $2.4 billion in damage. And at least 11 people now known dead. Cuban media reports that 5,000 homes there have partially collapsed and an additional 30,000 roofs ripped off. And of course, this is during the storm. Well, the concern here is the kind of damage, too, it could do in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. 50 past the hour, so we're going to get our update now on the tropics. Carl, we've been talking about the tropics certainly all day with this hurricane, but let's really focus in on the main impacts that we can expect in the Northeast.
Well, there are a few things that are really disconcerting. One is this long-lived, long-duration, widespread windstorm that is likely to knock out power for many, many people across the Northeast. And then you've got the effects at the coast with very large storms blowing the water over a long distance. They pile up the water, and the result could be a water level rise that really could be quite damaging in coastal areas. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment. We're awaiting the new advisory. It's not out yet. Should be out at any moment from the National Hurricane Center. I want to show you this amazing satellite picture. This is from the University of Wisconsin. This is rapid scan imagery. So we're getting an image every minute here as opposed to every 15 or every 30 minutes, and you can really see the motions in the storm. And, you know, we like to think of storms as fitting into nice, neat categories, being tropical or non-tropical, where there's really a spectrum, and this storm sits somewhere in the middle in that it's got what we call a warm core. It's behaving like a tropical system with thunderstorms feeding off of warm water from below. You can see the higher clouds fanning out here, not moving very much relative to the very fast wind in the lower levels. So there's lighter wind aloft, and then you've got this larger circulation circulation and the drier air wrapping in, and that part of the circulation feeding on stronger winds aloft and also the contrast between warm and cool air. So it's got properties of both tropical and non-tropical systems, and really is fascinating meteorologically, but unfortunately it's going to be a very lousy storm for many, many millions of people. So here's the latest from the Hurricane Center. We're still awaiting that new advisory. 75-mile-per-hour storm moving north-northeast at 9 as of 11 a.m. And I want to show you what the models have been saying. There's a lot of model agreement now about the storm generally coming into the northeast coast, and really many of the models are focusing on New Jersey. And in fact, the two main models, which had been so divergent just a matter of a few days ago, have now really come together. This is the European model and the USGFS, generally the #1 and #2 most reliable models that we look at. And you see that they both bring the storm in now into New Jersey. This is Monday evening, but remember that it's a really large circulation, so the effects will well precede that time. That's just around the time when we'll see the maximum effects from water level rise at the coast, and then we continue to see the storm affecting interior parts of the northeast and the coastline right through late Monday and into early Tuesday. So here's a look at the wind forecast. This is from the National Hurricane Center. Absolutely enormous area of tropical storm force wind across much of the western Atlantic. That begins to move in the Carolinas really tomorrow, and then through the overnight hours it will spread up into the 95 corridor, such that by Monday morning, when a lot of you would plan to be going to work, it's going to start to get pretty windy out there, and that wind is only going to get much worse through the course of Monday, and then into Tuesday morning. That's when we see this core of wind coming in with winds gusting to hurricane force, and that's when we really could see a lot of damage in terms of tree branches and trees down, power lines down. A lot of the trees, particularly in the mid-Atlantic region, still have many of their leaves, making them more susceptible to that. So that's going to be a huge worry, and today is the day to plan for having your power out. Now, there's the water level rise, 3 to 5 feet in North Carolina. And notice here, with that water piling up along the coast, we're talking about a 4 to 8 foot water level rise that's above ground level, and that may be enough to cause a major transportation disruption. We had some modest flooding of the subway during Irene, and we could be looking at that again, and if it's serious enough, it can actually knock out the subway system for quite some time. So hopefully that is not the case. And we're going to continue our coverage here in just a few minutes. Guys, back to you.
And Carl, it's hard to even imagine what kind of impacts that would have, because of course, you know, that's the financial center of the world.
That's how everybody gets around there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Carl. We appreciate it. And we're going to check back in with him, as well as our reporters that are out in the field. We will continue to give you the newest information on Sandy as it comes in. Well, after tearing through the Caribbean, the outer reaches of Sandy now soaking some areas here in the east, as you can see from this radar, and it is causing some dangerous coastal conditions.
But unfortunately, the worst may be yet to come as folks from Washington, D.C. to New York City brace for what could be a potentially historic hit.
And I'm meteorologist Julie Martin live in Negs Head, North Carolina, where the western fringes of Sandy are now bringing wind and rain. Coming up, we'll detail when the biggest threat will occur.
Well, a state of emergency has been issued for parts of 7 states and the Washington, D.C. area as Sandy churns just off the Atlantic coast. Hello, and thanks for joining us for the special edition of Weekend Now. I'm meteorologist Vivian Brown.
And a very important program for you to watch, because we continue to find a lot going on, and we are anticipating a lot more and a lot worse. Expert analysis of the latest advisory will be coming up here in just a moment.
Yeah, in fact, the gas stations across parts of Connecticut, central Connecticut, near the Hartford area, is one of the countless places, of course, for New England and the Mid-Atlantic where people are filling up their cars and gas cans, of course, rightfully so. Time is running out for you to prepare as we watch Sandy inch a little bit closer.
And of course, we do want to get the very latest now in Sandy, and Dave Malkoff is monitoring all the developments here from the satellite center. So Dave, fill us in.
Yeah, you see people lining up at those gas stations. That happens a lot before these storms because basically if the power shuts down, then the gas pumps won't work. Now we know 2 more states have declared a state of emergency in anticipation of Sandy's impacts. That's Connecticut and New Jersey. Down to Washington, D.C. now, where we hear the transit system and says most of its preparations are complete, but no decisions have been made just yet regarding reducing or stopping the rail or bus service. Same thing in New York. They are in a wait-and-see mode as well. Utility companies all over the Northeast are preparing, and about 100 energy workers from Arkansas are heading to the East Coast to help out, so the whole nation getting in on this. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Dave, and I know he'll continue to keep us up to date.
Okay, we are definitely watching, Sandy. Hurricane specialist Dr. Greg Postel is in the Global Forecast Center with the latest advisory now from the National Hurricane Center. Hi, Dr. Postel.
How are you guys doing? Yeah, we just got the latest advisory in from the Hurricane Center. Still a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane. Pressure's at 961. It is now on its northeastward track, moving at 11 miles an hour, basically paralleling the Carolina coast. This is all part of the forecast that we've been expecting and anticipating for the last couple of days. Here's the advisory. There we go, 75 on the speed, moving northeast at 11, is basically paralleling the coast, moving in that general direction off from about here that way. Now, the center of the storm is actually out here underneath that cluster of thunderstorms, but see the clouds and the rain showers extend well out to the west. So let's look at the latest cone from the Hurricane Center to show you exactly where we think it is going to go. It is likely to continue on that northeastward track through tomorrow morning as a Category 1 storm, 75 miles per hour, and then late Sunday night, perhaps early Monday morning, start to take a sharp left turn toward the west. This is critical because that will almost certainly now bring it in to parts of the middle Atlantic and northeast coast there, where we do expect a very significant system to move onshore there. Now, the center is likely to move anywhere onshore within this cone, but keep in mind the size of the storm is the important part to consider with regard to the preparations, because tropical storm force winds are expected to extend outward over 500 miles, 250 miles either side of where the center roughly comes on shore. So this is going to have wide-ranging impacts, and now is the time to get ready for them. So with that, send it back to you guys in the studio.
Really pretty amazing numbers when you think of that. 500 miles. Thank you so much. We're going to check in with you again at the bottom of the hour.
All right. And along the coast of North Carolina, we find our own meteorologist, Julie Martin, with the latest there. And Julie, you talk about dealing with a $30 million restoration effort in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So Sandy is something they don't want to see for sure.
Yeah, but they are very confident that this beach will hold up. In fact, there are 70 yards of basically pretty new sand here that's only been in place for about a year, and a pretty sophisticated system they have developed with the help of engineers to try to keep those storms at bay. And certainly that is the hope, and that is what we've been watching very closely here. You can see, though, the tide is out here, and the Atlantic is definitely churning. Those wave heights are picking up. I'd say they're anywhere from 5 to 7 feet or so. High tide is around 6:30 this evening, and that's when we're going to be seeing a lot of this water filling the beach that I am standing on. One of the problems with this storm are these onshore winds. We're seeing them come in from the northeast, and this is going to be that same direction, that same flow now for hours and hours and hours. So any water that makes its way in, any rain coming off of the storm, is also going to be going right toward property. So that's one of the problems with this, is the duration of this and the size of this system. As you mentioned, those tropical storm force winds extending about 500 miles from the storm's center. This storm is nowhere near us right now. In fact, the center is still well to my south, but by this evening, we will be experiencing tropical storm force winds here in eastern North Carolina. So Dare County, the county here, is one of 32 others in North Carolina that has declared a state of emergency. No evacuations here in the immediate Outer Banks area. However, residents right now are being urged to make sure their vehicles are on higher ground, batten down the hatches, and prepare for what could be power outages and high winds, possibly damage later on tonight. That's when the worst window will be, Heather and Vivian, late tonight and through tomorrow morning. Back to you.
All right, so battening down the hatches. Thanks very much. That's Julie Martin reporting from the Outer Banks of North Carolina.
And she always does such a great job of keeping us informed on everything. And we do continue our special coverage of Sandy. And coming up next on Weekend Now, we're going to get a special report from Stephanie Abrams on how the town of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, is preparing for a barrage of wind, rain, and waves. We'll be right back. Well, Sandy continues marching up the Atlantic coastline as it continues to impact the beaches up and down the coast. So take a look at some of the video here. This is actually from an eyewitness viewer. It's North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a beach that a lot of you like to spend time at. But today you can see those waves. They are just rocking in here as we continue to see Sandy churning things. And please send us your pictures as well. When tropical weather strikes, you can send us your images if you can do it safely. Go to weather.com or weather.com/eyewitness. You can get everything you need there. Right now, let's check on the radar and what we are seeing. Here's Vivian.
Well, I tell you what, the whole nation, if we could just talk about the whole country, the lower 48, most of the nation is pretty quiet. Certainly here in the middle of the country, we're noticing a little bit of wet weather in the Pacific Northwest, dry and sunny over the Southwest. It's the immediate eastern seaboard that we are focusing our attention, and rightfully so. We have Sandy, what we've been watching for several days now, and now we're watching a cold front that will be approaching the eastern seaboard as well. Wanted to talk more about Sandy, though, and the rain bands that we have today versus yesterday, because yesterday, remember, we were getting the rains along the coast of Florida. All of the tropical storm force advisories or tropical storm warnings have been deleted here along the coast of Florida because we're noticing the center of the storm far enough out to sea. In fact, the closest rain bands are over 60 miles away, so the game should go on without a hitch today with the Gators and the Bulldogs. But notice how as we move up the coast, how the coastline actually extends out into the Atlantic, so it is catching some of the heavier rains. Now, these larger numbers represent the sustained winds, but we've had reports of gusts up to 40 miles an hour here near the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina area, so it's getting windier, and of course with the persistent rain bands coming in, it does not look good. Eventually, as Sandy moves up the coast, we'll notice the Jersey shore being inundated with some of the heavier rain, just like we have a little farther south, and for that reason, flood alerts have been issued here from the Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way to New Jersey. So we want to be alert here, again, as Sandy moves up the coast here of the eastern seaboard. All the while, that surface cold front, again, just to the west, and that too will bring its share of rain, so flooding and winds, a huge issue over the northeast. More details on that now with Heather.
All right, thank you so much, Vivian. And Sandy is kicking up waves and also dumping rain up and down the Atlantic coast. It continues to track toward a potentially devastating landfall in the mid-Atlantic. Meteorologist Stephanie Abrams is in the field reporting from Rehoboth Beach.
Here in Rehoboth Beach, if this system comes in and we get that onshore flow and we get the surge, they do have a little protection, but not a lot. As you can see, they have the beach fence up. That obviously is going to be no match for the water. And then they do have these dunes, but they are small, though there is vegetation to try to hold them in place. And then notice this hotel that is right on the beach. There's no boards up. So they are just going to get that wind right off of the water with that onshore flow, if we get that onshore flow. And remember, you're going to have the strongest winds right at the coast because there's no friction. So if we do get that onshore flow, we could see a huge push of water. We could see big time power outages. And if there are any sort of chairs or debris like that, could easily be picked up by the wind. To be honest with you, when we were driving in last night and even today, we haven't seen a whole lot of people here in Rehoboth Beach doing any sort of preparations. It seems business as usual, but hopefully from the mid-Atlantic all the way up into Maine, people are getting ready for this potentially monstrous and devastating storm. Back to you.
And, you know, just to get an idea of how monstrous it will be, like Stephanie just said, I mean, take a look here. All these areas in red, these are places that we are telling you you need to take action now. Not just think about it, but actually take that action, because we're very concerned about the devastating effects. One of those effects is going to be widespread power outages. And you need to plan for that, because potentially you could be out of power for days, maybe even a week. And the reason that you're going to see that is because of all the winds, and you're going to have major impacts. With that, if you need medications, if you need cash, if you need gas, get all those things now. You don't know what will be working after this. And also make sure that you are stocked up with the kind of food that you don't need to heat and you don't need to keep it cold. You can see all the rainfall in addition to that we are anticipating. So we've got a lot of action that will continue to come through here in the days to come. Get set now.
Its way to our region, it's very, very important that we make sure that we have the supplies on hand that we're going to need in order to help us to get through this situation.
Make sure that you and your family have a kit so that you can sustain yourselves over the next few days when this disaster strikes. This storm is tremendous. It will affect tens of thousands of people. And the Red Cross is not a government agency. We are a nonprofit that relies on the generosity of folks just like you. So if you would consider going to our website, www.redcross.org, we deeply appreciate it. Another way to give is by texting. You can text the word Red Cross to the number 90999 to donate $10.
All right, we are all together in weather, so that is the Red Cross, of course, asking for your donation and the help for quite a bit of power outages that's expected across the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. Again, you can text Red Cross to 90999 to make a donation. And we want to get the very latest now on the preparations for the potential power problems we may see from Sandy. Carl, actually, this is Charles Smith. He's the PIO with the New Hanover County in North Carolina. Charles, can you hear me?
Yes, Vivian, I can.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us what you're doing right now. What's your biggest concern at this point?
Absolutely. Vivian, right now we are currently still monitoring the storm very closely. The size of it certainly is a concern to us. We are starting to see some of the tropical storm winds. We just recently had a gust of about 43 miles per hour one of our beaches on New Hanover County. But at this point, we're still encouraging, all of the residents to pay close attention to this storm. Don't underestimate, the winds that we're seeing right now, and prepare for about a 6-hour duration throughout the evening.
Well, as you mentioned, the winds are just starting to really kick off, and it is expected to be a long duration event. But as of right now, you have no reports of power outages in the area, right?
That is correct. We don't have any reported power outages. We don't actually have any major roadways that are seeing a lot of inundation of water. However, our high tide will be just after 6 o'clock this evening, so we are anticipating some rise in water at that point in parts of the southern end of New Hanover County. Okay, in plans of that, exactly what have you done? Have you had to call in additional crews just in case? No, ma'am. These areas are certainly in the low-lying areas. They are prone to flooding, so the residents in that area are anticipating that and have certainly made arrangements to not commute during the high water levels. But other than that, there's no other plans in place.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much, Charles. I wish you well. Certainly, North Carolina kind of sticking out into the Atlantic and will be one of the first places to feel the impacts, of course, from Sandy as it moves up the eastern seaboard. Again, before all is said and done, we're talking about over 50 million people perhaps impacted, as this will be a huge wind event, and power outages could be widespread across a good part of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. In fact, for more details, let's go back to Heather.
Thanks so much, Vivian. And, we are really anticipating that this is going to be a huge event of historic proportions, and that's why you really need to take this seriously. I know a lot of times you think things are overhyped when it comes to tropical systems, but we're not overhyping this. You really need to pay attention and do what all the officials are telling you to do. And if that's evacuate, do it. You can note here how as we go into tomorrow, we're going to be starting to see those effects really moving into the Northeast. These winds are going to be so strong. I know some of you still have leaves too in the trees. That is going to lead to a lot of trees getting knocked down or large branches and power outages. So that's going to be widespread for us. As we go into Monday and Tuesday, that's when we really start to feel the effects of this. We will see again that rain, the wind, the surge, flooding is going to be a major concern. But also, look at this. Look at that cold air that is coming in on the backside of the system. So much so that we're talking about snow now on the backside with areas like West Virginia, North Carolina. This would be in the mountainous areas, picking up some snowfall. So it's really a contrast between tropical weather and then that cold, wintry weather on the backside. Wednesday, I want to take a look at this too, because look at the middle of the country, very quiet. This is Halloween, of course. I know so many of you are going to be out there with your kids. You're going to have great weather, middle of the country, some rain and showers coming in across the west. But Vivian, it is going to be cold and stormy here in the Northeast and the Great Lakes. Maybe you'll have to find some alternatives to actually trick-or-treating.
All right. Well, you know what? Our special coverage of Sandy continues next on Weekend Now. Hurricane specialist Dr. Greg Postel is pouring over the latest information, and he will have the very latest from our Global Forecast Center. A late season storm has the East Coast bracing. Sandy continues its slow track north, drawing even closer to an eventual landfall that could affect up to 50 million people.
And residents in the path are already stocking up on supplies, and if they're not, they should be. Preparing for long-term power outages, we have expert analysis and team coverage spanning the coast, including meteorologist Julie Martin in Nags Head, North Carolina.
That's right, where we're feeling the western fringes of Sandy. The winds are picking up and the intermittent showers are here, but there's plenty more to come. I'll detail that and the threats elsewhere coming up in a live report.
And we are tracking Sandy all day, all night on the Weather Channel, and we're going to see it through our meteorologist Heather Tesh.
And I'm meteorologist Vivian Brown. Now, the impacts could be devastating. We're talking about flooding rains, destructive winds, and storm surges that will hit during a full moon, and of course, that's when the tides are at their peak, and all of these combine to make this storm a potentially historic proportional one. Now, Fire Island, New York has now ordered a mandatory evacuation.
That's right. In fact, we have some pictures that we've been looking at earlier as well, and that is in North Carolina that we're going to bring to you. Also, you know, as we monitor some of these areas, we continue to find the latest information, and we bring it to you as we get it in. So I'm going to go over some of this that we have. Of course, we are monitoring things. The Philadelphia mayor, he is calling for all kinds of things in terms of just preparing for this. And we're going to be finding that the subway system, they're also preparing for this. And we're getting information in, too, that the folks that run the subways, the buses in New York, they're already making some plans. And, again, they could make a decision even to shut things down here fairly soon, Vivian.
All right, because things could be devastating in the area. So let's bring in our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel, with the very latest. Now, Dr. Postel, the 2 o'clock advisory just came out, of course, about 30 minutes ago. So this system is inching closer and closer to the northeast.
Yeah, it is. It's actually paralleling the Carolina coast right now, a couple hundred miles offshore. Just looking at the satellite imagery, if you look at it right now, it is very large. You can see that. The center of the circulation may be right out here with this small patch of thunderstorms, but overall, this is a huge circulation extending hundreds of miles in either direction, in all directions, and in fact, it's going to get bigger, and that's part of the whole metamorphosis of this system. As we'll watch it over the next couple of days, it will just continue to grow in size. Here's the official track forecast from the Hurricane Center. Right now, it's a 75-mile-per-hour storm, and here's the cone that they have outlined, moving generally parallel to the coast for about the next 36 hours, 24 to 36 hours, then taking a hard left turn. Now, we're very confident now in this turn. All the models are beginning to show this, with the center making landfall somewhere in this red area, very likely early Tuesday morning, and so we have to watch now. That's for where the center goes, but again, this is such a huge storm that impacts will be spread out over a very wide area, hundreds of miles from the center. Let's look at one forecast model. This is the USGFS model. This is this afternoon. Center of low pressure is right about here. The areas in green are the rainfall, and these little pressure lines, these little lines are the pressure, so the closer they are together represent the stronger winds. So here's the center. I'll move that forward with you in time. Now we go Sunday, 3 o'clock. It's east of Cape Hatteras. There we'll be getting strong gusty winds, definitely over tropical storm force, with perhaps some heavy rains there as well. And then moving northward from there, Monday Now, this is the critical time. Late Sunday, you need to finish all of your preparations, certainly on the Jersey coast, all parts of Northeast as well, because by midnight Sunday night, it will likely begin to take a hard left turn, and then there we have a landfall. This particular model is landfall coming into central New Jersey Monday in the evening, 7 o'clock, with very strong winds, perhaps gust to hurricane force as well, again, with impacts spreading out very far from the center, perhaps 200 miles in either direction. So this is going to be a long duration event as well as a very wide-ranging event as well. So got to stay tuned and for the latest updates on that. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Postel, and I've got so many questions for you, so we're going to touch base again here coming up at about 10 before the top of the hour.
Okay, but right now let's go to North Carolina, the Nags Head area, where we find our very own Julie Martin, kind of getting battered by the winds and the waves, but the beach has undergone a new reconstruction, if you will, and they're pretty confident in this.
They are. In fact, they've undergone a $36 million beach renourishment project in just the past year, and they do believe that these beaches will hold. We're looking at about 70 feet of beach before you hit the Atlantic here in Nags Head, and there you see it churning up. Those waves are now probably 5 to 7 feet. You know, Dr. Postel was mentioning the storm kind of paralleling the coast here, and I've noticed the winds pick up in just about the past 15 minutes or so. The closest observations still say we're gusting around 30, but I would say I have noticed a bigger change in just the past, like I said, 15 minutes or so. But speaking of those beaches, also a lot of work done with the dunes here. So they do believe that all of this protection is going to be key in keeping Sandy away from the beautiful homes here along Nags Head. You'll notice this pier off behind me. This is an old fishing pier. It's still operational, but during Hurricane Isabel, there was a large section of this that was broken off. So we'll be watching that very carefully as well to see just how well it holds up in Sandy. Now, as far as the timeline here, we're looking at conditions to continue to deteriorate throughout the day today. The worst time here in the Outer Banks will be in the overnight hours. That's when we're going to be seeing those tropical storm winds. We could see gusts upwards of 60, 70 miles an hour. So with that will come the potential for power outages and also some coastal flooding, Vivian. So we've got a mixed bag here in the Carolinas, but then after that is when things get really interesting, when this storm goes back out to sea and actually takes that left hook toward the northeast. Back to you.
Absolutely, very interesting the next 3 to 4 days, so you got to keep it tuned to the Weather Channel for the very latest. We're constantly in communication with the National Hurricane Center. Of course, we have our team of veteran meteorologists here and our hurricane specialists and experts, so please continue to rely.
Everybody's going to need to take some action, I think. At minimum, bringing your lawn furniture and all that sort of thing. At most would be to evacuate.
The Weather Channel is Hurricane Central. I'm Dave Malkoff in Atlanta with all eyes focused on Sandy's path. It is time to prepare right now. Meteorologist Jen Carfagno shows us how those from the mid-Atlantic to the Northeast are getting ready for what could be a massive and catastrophic storm. Jen?
At the Cleveland Park Metro in Alexandria, Virginia, sandbags in place to prevent flooding as the region prepares for Sandy. Last-minute purchases included a run on generators as residents brace for massive power outages. People are also clearing the shelves at grocery stores across the area.
Well, I'm glad to get bottled water, any kind of water. Anticipating the storm, I think folks are going to be raiding all the stores and picking up as much water as they can.
I did my groceries last night and stocked up on batteries earlier. Be prepared.
That sentiment echoed by D.C.'s mayor.
We could have flooding in some areas of the city, which we are working hard to try to avoid that, but this is a tropical storm. It could have severe consequences for the region.
130 miles to the east, waves crashed on Delaware's picturesque Rehoboth Beach shore. It's almost too hard to believe such a huge storm could be heading this way, and the town's mayor is leading the call to action.
Everybody's going to need to take some action, I think. At minimum, bringing your lawn furniture and all that sort of thing. At most would be to evacuate.
Emergency managers in Sussex County telling residents to make their preps now. And in Rhode Island, boaters along the coast are not taking any chances. Many pulling their boats out of the water.
If the marina and the other folks around think that the storm is sufficient for pulling the boat, then I'm all for it.
commercial fishermen are more used to rough weather, say they're watching Sandy's path closely. After unloading the day's catch, they'll pack it up for the week.
Boats can part lines, boats can break loose, so it's really doubling lines up, get everything, cover all the bases.
I'm meteorologist Jen Carfagno.
And we just heard from the governor of Connecticut, who is looking forward to this storm, getting everybody ready. He's saying that this could be even a bigger storm for that area than Irene. Let's get over to the weather wall so we can get more on exactly what's happening right now.
All right, thanks very much, Dave. Well, we've gotten reports that hurricane-force winds extend out from the center a good 100 miles, more so to the south and west of the center, but tropical storm-force winds extend out almost 500 miles. So we're beginning to feel some of the winds here on the coast of North and South Carolina, but you can see the heavier rain bands are still a good ways from the coast of Florida, so that is good news. Okay, we're watching Sandy, but also we have this cold front that we have to watch as well, just to the west. So let's get a little bit closer. Again, the closest rain bands are a good 60 miles or so from the east coast. Jacksonville, I know the game is getting ready to start. A lot of tailgaters probably already out there for the game, the Bulldogs and the Gators. So that game will go on without a hitch. So that is certainly some good news. But look how the waves and the rain and the winds are pounding the coast here, the upper coast of South Carolina all the way to North Carolina, with gusts at times up to 40 miles an hour. So very, very choppy, to say the least. And the center of the storm is too far south to bring in some of the rains for you along the coast of New Jersey into the Massachusetts coastal areas, but that will all change now as we go through the next 24 hours, and that is why we do have flood alerts in effect for this area all the way to the Jersey shore. Again, conditions going downhill for the northeast, and that includes you too, Boston. Right, Heather?
Well, that is true, and we're going to be watching Boston like so many other areas as we monitor for these storms to come through, and very strong winds as well. So anticipate that things are really going to go downhill for you as we go into Monday, Boston. But, look at this as we watch. Of course, today, all of you are thinking, okay, not a big deal. By the way, this is another front that's coming in, and the two are going to combine forces. And because of that, you're going to see widespread rain coming through here. And, also, certainly we're worried about so many things in the east. And I was just checking in with one of our partners here with the Weather Channel, and that's Weather Underground. And Jeff Masters was saying how he thinks about a 20% chance risk that the subways could flood in New York City. And that could be catastrophic in terms of people getting in and around such a big city. So again, we're going to be watching areas Sunday, Monday, right into Midwest. So a very different story as we go through this weekend. Look at all that sunshine, temperatures, 40s and 50s, and even a taste of snow. Back with a tropical update, even more in-depth information.
Thank you so much for joining us here on the Weather Channel. You have tuned in just in time for our tropical update.
That's right, and we're going to send it over now to our expert area, and that is where Dr. Greg Postel is standing by, one of our hurricane specialists. And, a lot of people, when they hear about this, they're never quite sure how seriously to take it, but this really could be of historic proportion for New York City as well as other places and the impacts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, even when we talk about just meteorologically, this is unprecedented. We haven't seen a storm like this, but there will be some in the area that are affected by this that will have impacts that are unprecedented. Not everyone, but there will be some. And maybe some of that has to do with the fact that there are people living in locations now susceptible to storms like this that haven't lived there in generations past. So there's a lot to sort of consider, but definitely some folks will experience impacts from this storm that they've never felt before. So let's look at the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center. At 75 miles per hour, the 2 o'clock advisory pressure is 961. That continues to fall, at least slowly. Overall, the general trend is to go down slowly, and it's moving northeast at 11. That's roughly paralleling the coast. The center of the circulation is actually way out here. We're near that cluster of thunderstorms, but most of the rain with this system is on the west side. This is sort of going to be characteristic of this storm as it moves northward. Looks like most of the heaviest rain will be anchored or tied to the left or west side of this circulation. So let's look at the water vapor imagery showing areas where it's dry. Those are the darker oranges and blacks, and the area where it's moist. This is not looking like a hurricane. If you look at this satellite image, you think this is not a hurricane, but it is because it's got a little bit of a hurricane-like structure right in the middle. This little cluster of storms is not that dissimilar from a typical Category 1 hurricane, but outside of that, surrounding that, we do in fact have a very strong jet stream that is sort of interfering or perhaps expanding some of the effects associated with Sandy. So it is now in the process, as it has been, it's going to sort of a continual process of undergoing this merger, this Sandy, a hurricane merging with a jet stream on a much larger scale that is helping to spread out its impacts over a very broad area. So let's look at the cone from the National Hurricane Center. This is the latest one we have. It's going to be moving northeastward over the next 24 to 36 hours, and then when it takes that sharp left turn, we think Sunday night, early Monday morning, that will be critical because that is going to take it onshore, very likely Monday night perhaps, and as let's say, have winds near the center, perhaps up to 75 miles per hour, but really anywhere in this red area is still fair game for the center to cross, but that is only part of the story. You have to keep in mind how large the system is. The impacts will extend over a very large area, not like a traditional hurricane. It will have like nor'easter scale impacts, so the winds won't necessarily be concentrated right near the center. They will extend outward perhaps 100 or more miles from the center. So let's look at one of the forecast models showing you, take you through time about what it thinks Sandy's going to do. These little lines right here, these are the sea level pressure. The tighter they are together, that means that's where the strongest winds are, and these shades of green and yellow, those are the heaviest rains. So let's move forward in time through Saturday, Sunday afternoon, should be maybe 150 miles east of Cape Hatteras. Again, the heaviest rain on the west side of the system. We've seen this now throughout its lifetime, at least recent lifetime, over the last day and a half. Looks like that's going to continue. The models are all the models are showing that the rain will likely be heaviest on the west side, and let's move the storm northward, because about 3 a.m. Monday morning, you need to have finished your preparations. If you're in the Northeast, New York, Philly, anywhere on the Jersey coast, you need to finish those tomorrow, because early Monday morning, although it may not be really bad yet, it might be, but in case it doesn't, things will go deteriorate or go downhill very quickly Monday afternoon as Sandy begins to take that left turn and head rapidly onshore into New Jersey. Very likely now, the models are zeroing in on the Jersey coast Monday afternoon, Monday evening, perhaps early Monday night for a landfall there. But look at these winds are spread out over a very large area. They will be circulating around like that. So it's very important to keep in mind for storm surge purposes where the center goes. That will be critical, because north of that center, that will be where the most water will be brought onshore. But then as you move even forward from there, the center moves west, and there will be some southerly winds on the backside that will perhaps bring some storm surge maybe in the Delaware Bay here and also in the Chesapeake Bay. So we got to watch out for the southwest winds on the backside as this storm moves off to the west. So let's break down the timing, the impacts for tomorrow. We've got rain increasing along the Carolina coast of Virginia up to even New Jersey. Beach erosion possible, winds 25 to 40 miles per hour. And then on Monday, you have to have your preparations done by then, because we will see winds increasing 30 to 50 gusts, perhaps over 75 miles per hour, in particular near where the center comes on shore, with coastal flooding there. And then moving forward through Tuesday, you can't forget about this is a slow mover. It will take some time to spin down. We still expect wind gusts perhaps over 70 miles per hour, certainly on the coastal locations on Tuesday. And do not forget that there will be likely some heavy wet snow in the very highest elevations of West Virginia, perhaps 1 to 2 feet of snow possible, along with very, very strong winds. So this is a monster of a storm that it continues to obey the forecast. So with that, we'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Dr. Postel. And, you know, I keep thinking, too, when people might need us the most, they might not have power. So
that is right. But keep it tuned to the Weather Channel as long as you can for comprehensive